Rohit, you mentioned sort of the cost and the use of the pandemic, sunsetting the pandemic employer provision to sort of offset the costs. But, by my rough calculation, I mean, the business provision and the child credit provisions about $150 billion over the first couple of years. And the pandemic provisions about 78, almost 80 billion. So you're still short about 45 billion dollars. I mean, was there any interest in actually trying to close the rest of that gap? And if not, why not? And doesn't that sort of bode poorly for Congress's ability to address the deficit going forward? I mean, if they can't find $45 billion for something they all want to do on the tax side, does that mean they're not going to be able to find the trillion that we need to help pay down the debt and balance the budget?
Yeah. So honestly, the fact that they're paying for any of it is a little bit out of character for Congress. Typically, these extension of expiring tax relief provisions are not paid for at all. So paying for any of it is actually a little bit of a break from the historic norm in this space. And, like it or not, Congress lives under its own set of idiosyncratic budget rules. And the congressional budget rules, at the moment anyway, say, well, let's look at what happens over the next decade, right? And over the next decade, this thing is basically a rounding error addition to the deficit. It's a couple $100 million, but spread out over 10 years is like, the federal government might spend a couple $100 million while we're talking here today. So that's just the way that Congress looks at it. They look at the table that they get from the official estimators on Capitol Hill. They look at the bottom right-hand corner where the net number shows up. They see a number that's, 3 digits, not 4. And they're like, all right, good enough. Let's go. To your broader question as to whether Congress is going to be able to find, either spending reductions or tax increases to pay for things that are coming down the pipeline, whether that's, the continued expansion of entitlement spending or the expiration of all of the individual and pass-through and a fair number of corporate provisions at the end of 2025, color me deeply skeptical that Congress is either is going to want to, and even if they want to, that they will be able to find spending cuts or tax increases of sufficient magnitude to pay for whatever amount of tax relief that they would like to extend at the end of 2025. But just as a reminder for everyone, at the end of 2025, every working American, every W-2 wage earner in the country, everyone that's got pass-through income, or the vast majority of people that have pass-through income, are going to experience an automatic tax increase if Congress does not act before the end of 2025. It is a fiscal cliff, as we refer to it here in Washington, D.C. We had one of these in 2012 when I was working for Senator McConnell, and he negotiated this with then Vice President Biden. It's almost a complete replay, both of the issue set, potentially the political actors, and the amount of revenue at stake. And in 2012, we made zero effort and actually had zero debate about paying for any of it. I think we'll have a little bit of debate about paying for it this time around because the deficit picture, the debt picture is much worse than it was at the end of 2012. But the truth of the matter is, even just take the sort of President Biden's opening bid. He wants to protect anyone making less than $400,000 from a tax increase. That's about $2.5 trillion of revenue over the ensuing decade. And I don't think that there's $2.5 trillion of tax increases or spending reductions that even if Democrats just had to do it with their own votes, could unite around, and certainly not if we have any form of divided government. To do all of it, just to put the numbers in context, would cost about $4.5 trillion over the ensuing decade, right? And the federal government's that's probably close to about 10% of what we're going to collect over that same period of time. So these are real dollars. And look, I think we get serious about this when the public starts to care about it. Like when voters start electing members of the House and Senate who campaign on and then are authorized, feel empowered to execute the transaction of, we're going to cut spending and we're going to raise taxes and we're going to right the state of fiscal ship. But until it becomes a regular person voting issue, there's no reason for Congress to make the hard choices that this will inevitably entail, because cutting spending and raising taxes, I can't think of two less popular things in economic policy space than cutting spending and raising taxes. And it's because of that we have a $34 trillion national debt that is, headed only further north as you look at the tables.